Hi, everyone. Welcome to our July Book Club Favorites event. While all of our book club discussions are special, this month's is extra noteworthy. This month, we're discussing Sunshine Nails, a tender, hilarious debut from Mai Nguyen, and the author herself will be joining us. But this month, we're also joined by two very special guests. I'm so excited to introduce you to senior editor and author of A Pho Love Story, Lone Lee, as well as Carolyn Huynh, the author of the beautiful novel, The Fortunes of Jaded Women. Before we get into our discussion, I want to let everyone watching know 3 lucky viewers could win copies of the books from all 3 of today's discussion participants: Sunshine Nails, The Fortune of Jaded Women, and A Pho Love Story. To enter for your chance to win, just leave a question for us in the comments section of this video, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible live on screen today. And now, on to book club. Mai, thank you for joining us. Can you kick us off by telling us a little bit about Sunshine Nails?
Sunshine Nails is my first novel. It's about a Vietnamese Canadian family that runs a nail salon, and they've suddenly found themselves struggling to keep the nail salon alive when a chain competition salon moves in down the street.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, congratulations on the publication. Thank you, Carolyn, for joining us. Mai, when I first read your book, it was, the week after Christmas. And in publishing, that's sort of a dead time. People don't want to start working again. And I personally was like, I have to get back to work. I have to buy this book because it was so lively, so wonderful, so warm-hearted and smart. Dealing about it was about topics of family rivalry, and the restaurant business, and it gave a great view of Toronto and the immigrant community, and it was just so wonderful. So congratulations again. I'm excited to talk about it with Carolyn. So the first question, I guess, is Mai, you've traditionally been a journalist. Did you enjoy switching to writing fiction?
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun just making up characters and problems and drama on the spot. It's a different change for sure. Like, it's not, people say, writing is writing, but I think writing fiction and writing nonfiction is so completely different. It's like completely 2 different sports. Like, one is baseball, one is hockey, and it's hard to switch between the 2. But I really enjoyed writing fiction. When you're writing journalism articles, you have to find the right people. You have to make sure they're open to sharing all the details about their life or their subject matter. And with writing Sunshine Nails, it was so nice to sort of amalgamate all of the experiences I've had and the people I've met and compose 5 characters and one narrative into this one book. So it was really fun to just have like the whole gamut of range to write this novel.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Do you prefer one over the other? Hard to choose. It's like picking your, like, you know.
Fiction is hard because you can go in any which direction. With journalism, like I gotta stick to the cold hard facts.
Yeah, like objective. Yeah.
Direction. So it's kind of like an unrestrained way of writing, but also like so fun, and you can be so imaginative.
Right. Thank you. So I mean, another question we had, a lot of authors base novels off their families. How much of Sunshine Nails would you say is inspired by your own family? And then Carolyn, you please answer as well. And I guess I'll answer at the end too. But
I always have to be so careful with this question because some of the characters in the novel do very questionable behavior. To caveat of being
somewhat
like
illegal.
Yeah, Debbie is not my mother. Phil is not my father. They have never blackmailed anyone, for all I know. But it's I guess it's pretty close to what my family has gone through. My parents both run a nail salon for about 25 years now.
Yeah.
And the experiences they've faced in the nail salon, the struggles they've come across running this business are all mirrored in sort of what I've seen them go through. So it is pretty close. If I didn't grow up in a nail salon family, I probably wouldn't have been able to write this book because I wouldn't have known so intricately what their lives would have been like.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I appreciated about this, about your firsthand experience, your parents' experience. It was very clear that you at least had like a knowledge of this. And I think as an editor, I really appreciate it when authors, they can speak about mundane things and make it feel universal and feel real, even if you yourself, the reader, you haven't experienced it firsthand. So that's like a really great talent that you had in particular. Carolyn, would you want to talk about briefly about Fortunes and how you might have been inspired by your community, your family?
Yeah, although I do wish Debbie and Phil were my parents because they're so much fun.
Both of them are a riot.
Yeah. I will say that I also have to be kind of careful too because I think I did pull dialogue from my mother into Fortunes, and so I think it is conflated that maybe the mother, the matriarch Mai in the story, is after my mother. But the dialogue has been pulled from her, and I was pretty inspired by her hustle spirit, I guess you can say. And so that's woven throughout. So she is inspired by her, but also like it is quite inspired by the community, like the psychic in Fortunes. It's real, as you know, Lone. She's a real psychic in Hawaii. She's a Vietnamese psychic that people go to see. And so I do pull like kind of like larger than life figures into the book.
Yeah. The psychic is definitely real. It's my goal to visit her one day.
We'll do a girls trip.
And Mai, we'll bring you along too.
Like, I'm on board.
Yeah. Personally, so quickly about A Pho Love Story, which is my YA novel. I would say that a lot of it is based on our love for food. I think in the Vietnamese community, food is the way to bring everyone together, generations together. I just remember, sitting in a room with my family, my aunt and uncle, cousins, and we'd like roll egg rolls together, or like we would just cook together. And during that conversation, during that whole cooking session, we would always gossip and like just hear about people we knew, and it was just hilarious. And there's a lot of just jokes and a lot of misconceptions flying around the room where people think they know someone and then they're totally wrong. And that's the whole entire book of A Pho Love Story, of like people say something, it's just gossip, and then you're proven wrong about people. So the food is definitely something that's true that made it into my book. So for everyone, do you think you could, if your family had a business, do you think you could go into business with them? You have your parents' existing business. So what do you think? What do you say?
Oh God. I mean, I did work at the nail salon in summers, in between high school and university. I would do pedicures and manicures, and I can safely say I would not go into business with them. I love my family. I love spending time with them, but man, sometimes business and family just don't mix. There's a lot of butting heads, and a lot of people have ideas on how to run a business that doesn't reflect how you want to run it. And I'm just like, no, let's just keep business and family separate. So no, I don't think I would go into business with my family.
No offense.
Love you, Sam. Sorry. What about you, Carolyn? Do you think you would go open up a business with your family?
Absolutely not. We can't even get through like one dinner without somebody like sniping at somebody else. Like, can you imagine if there's like taxes involved, like writing up like putting together a deck together? Oh my God. I can't even travel with my mom. No, I don't think, yeah, I cannot go into business with my parents. Yeah. I'm already getting
It's like, no, never. It's a nightmare. Oh, that's so funny. I mean, I personally
the generational differences is hard too, because like I remember like I try to explain to my parents why they need like a social media page and why they need a nice website, and it's like, why? No one needs that. Or yeah, you need Wi-Fi, you need free Wi-Fi for your customers. I'm like, why? It's like it's so hard to explain to them such basic necessities of running a business that makes it friendly for your customers, and that's part of it too.
Yeah, I agree with you. It sounds lovely, having a family business, something to pass down to your children and stuff. But I don't think I'd make it that far, honestly. Because given my mom, she's sort of like Debbie in that she's really fierce, and if a customer talks back to her, I'm sorry to the customer. Like, the customer will never return, because my mom would go after her probably. So customer service wise, it's never going to work. And also because everyone's in my family personally is so different. So that's a no. We all agree. Quickly switching over to the YouTube side. There's a question from the audience. What would you recommend to book clubs as a signature cocktail and menu for this book? We like to pair books with food and drinks at our meetings. Oh, that's a great question. That's fun too.
Oh, that's a fun question. Okay, so for food, especially for the summer, I really love the Vietnamese summer rolls. We call it boi cuong, but it's basically just rice paper with vermicelli noodles, lettuce, shrimp, and pork, and you dip it in. You can dip it in hoisin sauce or peanut sauce, and it's like a perfect summer dish. It's so healthy. It's pretty filling. In terms of cocktails, I can't think of a fancy cocktail, but as long as you've got like Hennessy or Heineken in there, I think you're good.
I know you will be satisfied.
Cocktail, but just pass on shots of Hennessy for your book club. That'll go well.
Carolyn, I think for your book, I think we did have like a sort of cocktail too. I can't remember what it was though. Oh no, it's oranges or something. Oranges.
I think it was like an orange espresso martini.
That sounds good.
It's been so long. I think I just made it up. I have no idea.
No, that actually sounds good though. How about the food? What would you pair with it?
Oh my God. It's funny. I haven't read my book in so long. I was going to say oranges.
No,
yeah, just a bag of oranges. Maybe like carry around. Yeah.
Love it. I would do my family. I mean, I don't drink. But my family has been obsessed recently with lychee martinis, and those are pretty good. And for food, obviously, because my book, it's like probably pho or something. Yeah, like in a little cup that you can quickly eat. Let's see. Let's just continue with the Facebook questions. What is your writing process like? From Lucille on Facebook. Thank you, Lucille.
I wish I had a process. I try to, when I write and when I work on this book, I try to write without looking back at what I've previously written. When I first started writing, I had a tendency to, write a paragraph, a couple paragraphs, reread it, try to perfect it. But I found it just kept stalling me and the book would not go anywhere. So I have a rule where when I write, I don't look back at the previous sentence. There's another day for editing. So I just keep trying to move the book forward as much as possible and not reflect back too much on what I've written. Because I think writing is a completely different process from rewriting.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I forget that, okay, the whole goal is to get 1,000 words on the page, not to write 1,000 perfect words.
Yes.
So that's what I try to remind myself. It's not always easy as a recovering perfectionist, but what gets the work done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much like first generating, getting the idea on page, and then you can mess around with it. Yeah. How about you, Carolyn? Is that similar?
I'm a little bit unhinged in my process, but I always know the first sentence and I always know the last sentence.
Oh, yeah.
And then everything else, I have to figure out how to fill up. And so and then I'm not quite linear with it, where I write some chapters and then I'll write another chapter, but then I'll have to toss out the other chapter I wrote. So it's really unhinged, yeah. But I always know the first sentence, I always know the last sentence.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, the first sentence thing I can understand, but some people, they have to write through the story in order to get to the ending. Yeah. So that's really fascinating. I personally, as a writer, I write, I guess, in beats, where I would write like, not as in a script way, not a formal script format and stuff, but like I would have a scene here and like there's a dialogue that kicks off the scene, or a gesture within the scene that kicks it off. So I also do chaotic in the same way of I don't do linear. I hop around. Google Docs is my friend because there's multiple docs I'll open at the same time, and I just cut and paste around, hop back and forth documents. It's all fun. Back to the book, Sunshine Nails. In Sunshine Nails, you write from very different viewpoints. Is there one character? Well, actually, first, what was that like? What was your purpose? And then, is there one character you identified with more than the others?
Writing multi-POV was very hard. It's like almost writing 5 little books into one, and trying to make sure their narrative made sense in the book and that they were all seamless together, but that they also wrapped up nicely in the end. I originally started writing the book in just Jessica's point of view. It was just going to be the second generation point of view, but then it was so hard to write a family story when you only write from the second generation's perspective. I found that as I was writing Jessica's story, I was starting to feel really claustrophobic. I wanted to get out of her mind and see what her mother thought, what her father thought, like what did the brother think, what did the recently immigrated cousin think. And so I just started expanding it out into 5 POVs. And yeah, it was technically a difficult process, but I think it made for a nicer family story where you can understand everyone's perspectives and motives and root for the family as a unit rather than like rooting for one family member over another. And so that's sort of how the 5 POVs came together. It's hard to write a family story when you don't have multiple perspectives. I mean, Carolyn knows she had a full cast of family members in the Fortunes of Jaded Women.
Yeah. I had the whole country of Vietnam. I don't know. But it's so funny because like I didn't realize how much I love a big ensemble cast. So like for me reading like Sunshine Nails, I was like, okay, Debbie, Phil, Jessica, right? I was like, it was so easy for me to consume. I'm also like, I love like a good buffet. So I like variety, right? So every chapter I like something like different. But I like looking back, like I was like, that's like unhinged to have 14 like POV characters for Fortunes, but somehow we made it work.
It definitely worked.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah.
It's funny, for my next book, I'm really, really trying to restrain myself. So I really had to hold back to like 5 POVs. But there is an itch in me. It's like, God, just throw in one more character.
Don't worry, Carolyn, I'll be there to to rein you in. But no, I think because the fact that both of you have written multi-generational perspectives, I think it just shows, especially for refugee and immigrant families, the first person we know when we get to a new country, they get to a new country is their own family. They are the ones who travel as a pack, and that's who they know. That's who they stay close with. And that's really ingrained in our culture, where it's like family first, which, you know, some people would say it's sort of problematic in a way, but it influences our idea of the world and idea of ourselves. So I feel as if it's a positive of how we're part of like a really tight family union most of the time, that both, you know, love to snark at each other and also just love each other. So oh, before we get to the next question, I'd love to just remind you, everyone here, that there's going to be 3 lucky viewers who could win copies of Sunshine Nails, the Fortunes of Jaded Women, and A Pho Love Story. And if you can win that by dropping a question into the comment section of the video. So please do. And thank you so far to people who have commented. Let's see. The next question, I guess, is the Drunk family has 2 separate generations in it. Was it difficult to write from a different generation's perspective? And I'll tack on to that question because you also have this perspective of someone who is sponsored over, which is, I personally have not seen that a lot in narratives. You would have characters who are sponsored over because that's a reality that a lot of immigrant families have. But she was one of the main POVs. So yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely easier to write from the perspective of a child of immigrants because that's where I came from.
Mhm.
The next hurdle was writing about the perspective of the first generation, you know, the parents that immigrated over. So I really had to like tap into how the parents felt about the nail salon being struggling under pressure, and how the parents felt about the children having career crisis. And it really allowed me to like open up my minds and see like, how do my parents feel about the career choices I've made and the decisions I've made. Definitely the hardest perspective was writing Thuy's perspective. She's the 19-year-old teenager that is recently sponsored over from Vietnam. And that's a new perspective. I don't think we talk very much about new immigrants who have come over not because of war or famine or poverty, but because they want a new life in North America. And this is, I mean, we've had many cousins that we've sponsored over from Vietnam. And so I've tried to tap into what their experience is like. And I think they have their own struggles too, in terms of, you know, they may not have had to escape a war-torn country per se, but I think they also struggle with finding an identity for themselves in the country they've landed in. They feel so indebted and grateful for the family members that have sponsored them over, and they feel like they owe their lives to them. But then again, like they also have dreams that they want to pursue too, that maybe they don't feel comfortable pursuing because they feel like they have to be grateful and they have to be indebted to this family. And that's sort of where Thuy is in the story. She's sort of wants to respect Debbie and Phil and for all they've done, but she also wants to go down her own path and not the path that was prescribed for her.
Yeah, that's true. I found her to be such a wonderful, full-dimensional character, and she makes some interesting choices, and you understand them as you're reading about them. Like, some people might not agree with it, well, depending on where you're coming from, but like it makes sense, so much sense, you know. And that's how you know you have a complex character, where you just, there's so many things that you can talk about this teenager. And I hope people will just love her as much as I loved her. I would also think, like, what I saw in your book is that their perspective of the nail salon, Debbie and Phil, it was like their proof that they made it. Like, their proof of their hard work. Everything turned out, well, it didn't necessarily turn out the way they expected, but they have survived this long, and they're not going to let it go. Initially, Jessica, who was the person that you had started writing with, Jessica was this person who, she knew that her family had a business, but she wasn't necessarily connected with it. But she comes back and she helps with the salon, and that experience itself, it made her see the nail salon. It made her see her parents too. And I thought that was a great way, just because, you know, the understanding between parents and children doesn't necessarily always happen. There's always this like fight between them. But through having this common activity, this common goal, it seemed as if Jessica, personally, I feel as if the children were able to understand their parents even more, and that's what I appreciate. Let's see. Let's go back to the questions from YouTube or Facebook. From Pam on YouTube. Oh, this is fun. Can you please talk about the audiobook process? What was important to you about selecting a narrator? Are you a fan of audiobooks? So, fun fact for everyone here, coincidentally, just by coincidence, no one did anything to do this. Our narrator we have the same narrator, basically. It's Vivi Nguyen, who's amazing. You should check out the audiobook because she has a way of just bringing characters to life. But yeah, you too. Can you please talk about the audiobook process? Yeah, and what was important to you about selecting a narrator? Are you a fan of audiobooks?
The audiobook was such a fun process. So in case no one knows, the audiobook, because there's 5 perspectives, there are actually 5 narrators in
Yes,
the
that's
book,
true.
narrating each chapter, which is kind of rare. I don't think I've listened to an audiobook that has more than like 2 or 3 narrators. And so it was really fun picking the narrators. All the narrators are of Vietnamese American descent. And so they are able to speak in the language. They're able to speak the Vietnamese words that are in the chapters, and some of them even have accents that go really well. Like Phil's character has an accent that goes really well with his character, and I think I've heard from several readers who've read the book but then went on to read the audiobook that the audiobook just definitely brought the characters to life a lot more than just reading the book. I think just hearing the voices, like you can hear like the different ages in the voices, like you can hear an older voice and younger voice. I'm so happy that we went with a full ensemble cast for the audiobook because it just shows all the different perspectives that are in this book.
Yeah, and those narrators are so talented to do that, to be able to do multiple accents and different personalities. Carolyn, what was the audiobook process like for you?
So I picked Vivi because I did do research and I saw she did your book, she did Michelle Kwok's book, and also she's from Orange County, which I thought was so perfect. So I picked her, and I think she deserves an Oscar or an EGOT.
I do too.
She did 14 characters voices in like Vietnamese Australian, Vietnamese Canadian, Vietnamese, like, like different, like British, like it was just like, and so many different characters, like on her own, which is, the woman deserves a trophy or something. Yeah.
That's great. We're actually almost nearing the end. I think we're going to fit in one more question. I can't believe time flew by so quickly. Wow. Let's see. Will there be a sequel or a spinoff to Sunshine Nails? Without spoiling anything, I'd like to find out the futures of the various characters.
Well, this is why we have fan fiction. Everyone can write the futures of the characters. Currently, there is no sequel being in the works for Sunshine Nails. I am working on something different, but I've been hearing a lot of people like really wanting to know what happens to the Tran family because the book sort of ends with like a new journey on the way.
Yeah.
I see why it seems like Sunshine Nails 2 sounds like it's something that could be there. But who knows? Never say never.
Yeah, definitely. The way that it ends, there's possibilities, but we have to respect the author's wishes too and intent, because I know that might be annoying questions sometimes to hear, but it's annoying, but also so gratifying of like people just seem to respond so well to your character and they just want to see more. So but thank you so much, Shanice. I'm going to turn it to you.
I actually was just thinking when you end off with you wanting more, it actually lets you think about what you want the characters to do or what you think their futures would be like. So I kind of like that. It's like you leave it up to the reader to figure out what their futures are going to be like because it starts off with this new journey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to thank you all so much for this incredible discussion. This was an amazing discussion. But before we go, I just want to give one last reminder that you can all still post a question in the comments section to be entered to win copies of Sunshine Nails, The Fortunes of Jaded Women, and A Pho Love Story. Our next book club favorites read will be the St. Ambrose School for Girls. Join our Facebook group or follow us on Instagram for latest updates. And to keep up with Mai, you can follow her on Instagram and Facebook. Finally, Lone Carolyn and Mai, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope everyone has a lovely afternoon. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.